All right, let's talk about something that trips up so many people moving to or from the UK. It's this massive puzzle. Are you a UK tax resident? Seriously, the answer changes everything. So let's dive in and actually figure this thing out.
So, here's the plan. First, we're going to look at why this is such a big deal. Then we'll walk through the official rulebook, the three-step Statutory Residence Test. We'll hit the super clear automatic rules, then get into the trickier ties test, and wrap up with what happens when you move right in the middle of the year.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Why is this even a thing? Well, before 2013, figuring out your UK residency was a mess. It was this confusing jumble of old rules and court cases, and a lot of people were just left guessing. And trust me, the consequences of guessing wrong, they are huge.
I mean, this is the question for anyone moving internationally, right? It's not just about where your suitcase is, it's about how you're taxed. And that's a question you absolutely 100% need a solid answer to.
And here's exactly why the stakes are so high. If you're considered a UK tax resident, HMRC, that's the UK taxman, can tax you on your income and capital gains from literally all over the world, not just what you earn here. So yeah, getting this right from the get-go is pretty crucial.
So to fix all that confusion, the UK brought in what's called the Statutory Residency Test, or the SRT for short. You can think of it as the official rulebook designed to give you a straight-up yes or no on that residency question. And honestly, the best part about the SRT is its structure. It's what they call a waterfall test. What that means is you work through it step by step in a specific order. And the second you hit a test that applies to you, boom, you have your answer. You stop. No need to go any further.
And this is exactly what that flow looks like. First, you check the automatic overseas tests. Basically, are you definitely not a resident? If the answer is no, you move on to step 2. The automatic UK tests. Are you definitely a resident? And only if you're still in that gray area do you move on to the final, more detailed step, the sufficient ties test.
You know, for a lot of people, the whole thing ends right here in these first 2 steps. They give you these really straightforward, black and white answers based on just a few key facts. It's the quick win.
Okay, but before we jump into the actual tests, we have to get one really important definition straight. What even counts as a day in the UK? Well, for tax, a day counts if you're physically in the UK at midnight. So get this, if you fly in at 11 p.m. and leave at 1 a.m. the next morning, you were here at midnight, and that counts as one full day. Now, there are some exceptions for just passing through an airport or for really exceptional stuff like a medical emergency, but that midnight rule, that's the foundation for almost everything. All right, first up, the automatic out tests. These are the ways you're definitively not a UK resident. So you're out if you've recently left the UK and you spend fewer than 16 days back here. If you're new to the country, you got a little more breathing room. Under 46 days keeps you out. And finally, there's a big one for people working abroad full-time. You're also automatically non-resident as long as you keep your total UK days under 91. And this is key, your UK work days under 31. Now, if none of those out tests hit you, you flip the coin and check the automatic in tests. And these are just as clear. Spend 183 days or more here, you're in. Your only home in the entire world is in the UK, you're in. And if you work full-time here for a full 365-day period, yep, you're automatically a resident. You know, let's just stop and talk about this number for a second. 183. That's basically half a year. And it is the simplest, most powerful rule in this entire test. If you cross that 183-day line, residency is automatic. It doesn't matter what other connections you have, where your family is, nothing. This number trumps everything. But what happens if you don't fit into any of those automatic boxes, right? What if you spend, 100 days in the UK? Well, that's when things get a little more interesting. We're now in the most nuanced part of the test, where it's all about balancing the time you spend here with your connections to the country. But the core idea is actually pretty simple. Your connections to the UK, what HMRC calls your ties, they act like a magnet. The more ties you have, the stronger that magnetic pull is, and the fewer days you can actually spend here before you're pulled in and considered a resident. So what are these ties? Well, HMRC looks at 5 specific things. Do you have immediate family here, like a spouse or a young child? That's a family tie. Do you have a place you can live in the UK? An accommodation tie, that's a big one. Do you work here for more than 40 days in the tax year?
That's a work tie. Have you spent a lot of time here in the last couple of years? That's the 90-day tie. And finally, there's one just for people leaving the UK. Did you spend more days here this year than in any other single country? That's the country tie.
Okay, and here's a really, really important twist. The test doesn't treat everyone the same. It makes a big distinction between arrivers, that's people who haven't been resident here recently, and leavers, people who were resident recently. And the rules for leavers are way stricter. Basically, it's harder to shake off UK residency than it is to pick it up in the first place.
And this table just shows you that difference perfectly. Just look at that middle row, the 91 to 120-day bracket. An arriver, someone new to the UK, would need 3 ties to become a resident. But a leaver, someone who just left, they only need 2. And look at that bottom row. If a leaver spends over 120 days here, just one single tie, like just having a home available here, is enough to make them a resident again. See? Much stricter. All right, so we've figured out how to know if you're a resident for a whole tax year. But what if you move halfway through? I mean, most people do, right? Well, the SRT has a pretty clever solution for this very common problem. I mean, this is a huge worry for anyone moving. If you land in the UK on, say, October 1st, does that mean the UK gets to tax your global income all the way from last April? It's a scary thought. But the answer, thankfully, is usually no. And the reason it's a no is because of something called split-year treatment. If you qualify for it, it lets you literally slice the tax year in 2. You get treated as a non-resident for the overseas part of the year and a resident for the UK part. And that protects all the income you earned before you got here or after you left. This timeline makes it super clear. Let's imagine you moved on September 1st. See that? The whole period from April to the end of August is your overseas part. No UK tax on your worldwide income during that time. Then, from September 1st onwards, you're in the UK part, and that's when you're taxed like a resident. It creates a nice clean break. But you've got to be careful here. Qualifying for this split-year treatment isn't automatic. It has some very strict rules. If you pop back to the UK too often after you've supposedly left, or if you keep a house here that's technically still available for you to use, or even if you come back to live in the UK the very next year, all of those things can blow up your claim, and you could end up being taxed for the full year. So you really have to plan this part carefully. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways? First, UK residency isn't random. It's a logical, step-by-step process. You always start with those simple automatic tests. If you're still in that middle ground, then it's all about that balancing act between your UK ties and your days. And finally, if you're moving mid-year, split-year treatment can be an absolute lifesaver for protecting your foreign income. The bottom line is the statutory residence test actually puts the power back in your hands. Sure, it's a complex puzzle, but it's a puzzle that you can solve with a bit of careful planning. So now that you have the framework, you can actually manage your status instead of just waiting to see what happens. The only question left is, how are you going to plan your days and your ties this year?